Good morning, everyone, and welcome to South Florida for our December board meeting. I would especially like to welcome Karima Holmes and Matt Slinkard, our newest board members, to their first official board session. And we'll have a little opportunity to hear from both of them later on in the meeting. Today's meeting focuses on the accomplishments of 2019 by the FirstNet Authority and outlines our priorities for 2020. Each of the board committees will propose updates to their charters to align their work with the priorities for 2020, and the committees and the board will vote to amend these charters and bylaws to reflect these changes. This meeting will provide an opportunity for us to reflect on the progress that has been made to deliver public safety's broadband network, the network that has been dedicated to public safety and is being built for them. Let's not forget that less than 2 years ago, we were finalizing state plans when we were waiting for the last states and territories to opt in or not onto the network. And I remember being in the December timeframe, and every day was a new adventure. Of course, by the end of that time period, all 56 states and territories had opted in, and it was off and running. So, earlier this year, I had the opportunity to join public safety officials in West Virginia to announce a new FirstNet cell site in Preston County, quite a rural area. And this was just one of a number of new network developments announced this year. And as the network expands, adoption is also increasing. And today we're going to hear from Chief Greg Rubin of Miami-Dade Fire and Rescue and Chief Frank Kitzero of the Palm Beach County School District Police Department on their experiences using FirstNet. And we're honored to have you here, and thank you very much. Just as we've made progress with our network oversight and deployment, we continue to do what we said we would do and delivered the FirstNet Authority Roadmap. And the roadmap was developed from public safety, industry, and government and our network contractors, AT&T, input. This is a very collaborative effort. The roadmap provides a view of the public safety's opinion to what the critical communications needs and technology trends for mobile broadband communications over the next 5 years look like. It is a living document and will evolve as time progresses. This was a key milestone for 2019 because the FirstNet Authority Roadmap is really designed to guide the growth, evolution, and advancement of FirstNet. It will and is helping to chart a path for our programs, activities, and investment strategies to maximize the impact of the FirstNet experience. You will hear during the session today and each of the committee updates, the progress being made to fulfill the priorities that public safety helped to lay out in this roadmap. So today's agenda includes the announcement of our next Chief Harlan McEwen Public Safety Broadband Communications Award recipient, exciting moment. A FirstNet user spotlight highlight with Chief Rubin and Chief Kitzero. A Public Safety Advisory Committee update from the PSAC Chair, Todd Early. A review of the FirstNet Authority Board Committee accomplishments in 2019, the identification of our priorities for 2020, as well as the Board Committee charter amendments that are being adopted, a presentation of and a vote on the Board Resolution number 103, FirstNet Authority Bylaws and Committee Charter revisions, closing remarks from Ed Parkinson and Jeff Bratcher, and then subsequently a vote to adjourn for the holidays. Before we get started, I also wanted to announce a recent addition to our leadership team, Ms. Lisa Casillas, who's to my left. She's joined the team as Deputy CEO. She comes to FirstNet Authority from the Department of Commerce, where she was Deputy Assistant Secretary of Administration within the Office of the Chief Financial Officer and Assistant Secretary of Administration. She celebrated her 28th year in government service last week, and so we're grateful for her being here. She's actually not new to FirstNet. She was the Deputy CFO for Commerce during the time when the work was done and the approval was made for the MPSBN request for proposal in 2015 and 2016. She has a deep understanding of our mission and our unique public-private partnership business model, and also has served as a strong advocate for FirstNet success within the department. I think Lisa's financial expertise will serve us well as we move forward with our investment planning and other priorities, particularly as it relates to communicating those things throughout the government oversight bureaus. And she also will have oversight responsibility for the enterprise risk management. And will report to the governance committee on that matter. So as a start to today's meeting, I'd like to ask our acting board secretary, Jennifer Watts, to call the roll for the board and confirm that each committee has a quorum. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Edward Horowitz.
Present.
Okay, very good. Sheriff Stanek.
Present.
Richard Carrizo.
Present.
Welton Chase.
Present.
Neil Cox.
Present.
Brian Crawford.
Present.
Vincent De Laurentiis.
Present.
Billy Hughes.
Present.
Karima Holmes.
Present.
Tip Osterthaler.
Present.
Paul Patrick.
Present.
Christopher Pyhota. Matt Slinkard.
Present.
David Zolette.
Present.
Mr. Chair, we do have a quorum for the board as well as for all 4 committees.
Thank you, Jen. So each member of the committee has before them, say again?
Conflicts of interest.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Apologize, one more administrative.
I have an administrative. After the roll call, we have to just get a report on the conflicts of interest.
Okay.
Jennifer.
Prior to participating in the FirstNet Authority Board and combined committee meeting today, the board members have reviewed the agenda as well as the conflict of interest guidance provided by the Ethics Law and Program Division of the Department of Commerce, Office of General Counsel, regarding the conflict of interest standards that apply to the board members. All board members have responded prior to today's meeting that they do not have a conflict and will not need to recuse themselves from participation in any portion of this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you to everyone to making sure that you are able to participate in all aspects of these meetings. So each, just I'm moving on now to the approval of the minutes. Each member of the board has before him or her the minutes of our September meeting. Are there any additions or corrections to those minutes at this time? Seeing none, I will take a motion that we accept these minutes.
So moved. Second.
Second, Rich, thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Hearing none, no abstentions, I take it. So the September meeting minutes are accepted, and Madam Secretary, please make the minutes available to the public following this meeting. The next item on our agenda is giving out the Chief Harlan McEwen Public Safety Broadband Communications Award. We are honored today to announce the 2019 awardee recipient. The award, if you recall, was established in 2017 to recognize the spirit of service, commitment, and dedication that is a proud tradition among public safety. It was created in honor of Chief Harlan R. McEwen for his extraordinary expertise, experience, and leadership as the founding Public Safety Advisory Committee Chair. This award honors an individual who has displayed remarkable leadership or made significant contribution in the fields of public safety broadband communications. And it's with great pleasure that I announce this year's Chief Harlan R. McEwen Public Safety Broadband Communications Award recipient, Sheriff Neil Miller from Buffalo County, Nebraska. Sheriff Miller's commitment to public safety and his community are evident in his career over the past 40-plus years as a dedicated public safety officer. He was born and raised in Nebraska. He started in law enforcement at age 19 as a village marshal in Clarks, Nebraska. I read somewhere that in order to get trained up and go on to the police academy and firing range that you needed to be 21, and he was only 19, so he had to call somebody up when he went to the gun store to buy a gun and get his bullets, that someone could actually make the purchase on his behalf. And I discussed this with him yesterday, and I said, well, why don't you call your dad in? He said, well, I called the mayor, and the mayor came down and took care of this for me. And that's, I think, a pragmatic approach to pursuing a career that you ultimately fell in love with and still have today. He has some strong principles. Among them is, one of them is related to money. And I'm going to pull a quote from an article that said, if taxpayers are paying for it, he's going to make sure that the things in his department, cruisers, equipment, and the new jail, are taken care of well. I think you have to lead by example, and that's what the public expects of us, and I don't want to disappoint the public. That's one. The second, he has a good understanding of technology and using it where it is a strategic opportunity and not because it's a shiny new object. And his view there is technology is great as long as it does something for you. If you can implement technology to save on personnel costs or improve public safety, then I think it's great. And that's the essence of what his approach has been in Nebraska as it relates to FirstNet. And I understand that he's done some very creative things and has on the drawing boards some creative things to do with FirstNet and the apps. So I'm delighted. You're a strong proponent of mobile data access for officers and helped launch E911 and text to 911 in Buffalo County. He has served numerous terms as president of the Nebraska APCO and NENA associations, has been instrumental in bringing FirstNet to Nebraska as chair, co-chair, and an active member of the Nebraska Broadband Working Group since its inception. And Sheriff Miller, we are very honored to have you with us today, and your wife, Niece. Thank you for your dedication of your life's work to protecting others and to driving innovation to keep communities safe. Congratulations, this is a well-deserved award. But at this point, what I'm going to suggest is that we go to stage left where I'm able to hand you the plaque. They're going to take some photographs of you and the family and some other people up here with the board. And then after that, I'm going to ask you to say some words, please. Okay, so right now, why don't we head over to the stage left and deal with that. So, Sheriff, perhaps you might want to say a few things. Don't take more than 20 or 30 minutes, please.
I can assure you I will not. Good morning. I want to take this opportunity to thank you very much, the board, for everything that you do for this award. I'm humbled and very honored to be able to receive this award. I want to make sure I mention that Lisa Dixon and Kyle Richardson are the face of FirstNet for Nebraska, and they spend a lot of time coming out there. And so I want to thank them for their efforts and everything that they do FirstNet for Nebraska.
We're blessed to have them.
You are blessed to have them. They're wonderful people. Harlan McEwen, I remember going to IACP and NSA, and every time we went, Harlan was there leading the charge for public safety broadband. And he would tell us in a very firm way that we needed to support this, and this was being built for us. And Harlan was always the one that made sure that we understood the reason that FirstNet was going to be coming to us, and that we needed to be very involved. And so I really want to thank Harlan for everything that he did, because he started us down this road. And it's very important that we remember him for all that. He was just tireless in his efforts to promote this. Yesterday's meeting, sitting in on the board meeting, and listening to the discussion with the Florida group, that's a familiar discussion because Nebraska had some similar ones. And one of the things that I was very pleased out of the board meeting yesterday was listening to the passion that Neil Cox had for what you are all trying to do. It may not be there yet, but it's coming, and we're early into a 5-year build, and I think we've got to keep that in mind on the public safety side. We're very, very early into this. This is something that we are going to use every single day, and we are very lucky to have it, and I feel we have a duty and an obligation to embrace it. It's not quite there yet, and I get that. It's not there yet in Nebraska either. I can tell you that the east end of the state was the only AT&T coverage in the whole state. But I get emails every day of new sites coming up in Nebraska, Band 14 sites, and we've been given some really great spectrum that works well for public safety. So you guys, this group, you're kind of our guardians for FirstNet. You're the ones that make FirstNet different from the other carriers, because all the other carriers want to try and get our business. They all tell us the things they're going to do, and they're doing those things because FirstNet forced their hand. I was sat in meetings where there was discussion that priority would never and preemption would never come to law enforcement because we were just another customer. That's all changed, and it's changed because of everything that's happened with your board. So I want to say thank you. I want to let you know that I'm very proud to be a part of this, and Neil Cox and other board members, keep up the good work, because I appreciate that true passion is what's going to make the deputies that work for me safer in doing their job. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. So what Sheriff Miller is referring to is a briefing session that we had yesterday in a presentation from law enforcement and public safety in the Miami-Dade, Broward County area. And it was during that was really truly reinforced as to the fact that coverage is critically important, and that when the coverage is there, it's almost a duty and obligation for a first responder to be on the FirstNet network, because it is being built for first responders, and will have features and functions associated with it that are unique to Band 14 and are unique to FirstNet. And it's through that enthusiasm, as you'll hear from Neil later, that the entire board shares that enthusiasm, entire organization shares that enthusiasm. The Department of Commerce shares that enthusiasm, because we understand the need to provide solid communications devoted and energized on behalf of public safety for now And as we follow this roadmap going forward, that we have an investment strategy that goes towards making sure that network is fresh and refreshed. So Sheriff Miller, on behalf of the FirstNet Authority and this board and our entire organization, thank you for your service to public safety. Thank you for committing to improving broadband communications in Nebraska, and you'll be a reference site for us as we go to the rest of the country. Thank you.
Good.
So it's now my pleasure to introduce representatives from two public safety agencies to share with us their experience using the FirstNet network. I don't know, Dave has, okay, so we had on the list to attend is Chief Greg Rubin, who is with us. He's from Miami-Dade Fire Rescue, and Chief Franz Kitzrow of Palm Beach County School District and Police Department. So I think it sounds to me like Franz is delayed in track of something going on at the office. That's not a good thing, not a good thing, because his area of jurisdiction is our schools, 187 schools in the district. And but in that gives us an opportunity to let Chief Rubin take twice as long. I also want to indicate that, and that also just indicate that Chief Rubin is one of our newest members to the Public Safety Advisory Committee, and next week is going to join Todd Early and the team out at their in-person meeting. So, take it away.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. As been stated, I'm the communications chief for Miami-Dade Fire Rescue, and I also serve as the International Association of Fire Chiefs Communications Committee Chair. As was mentioned a few minutes ago by Sheriff Miller, I want to echo that sentiment that the board hosted a public safety roundtable yesterday, and there were law enforcement, fire, and EMS disciplines that were present. And as stated, it was a very passionate discussion at times, and I felt that it provided both sides of the table to get an understanding of where our current state was and the discussion of what the priorities are. And I look forward to continuing that energetic discussion and hope that moving forward that the board takes an opportunity when appropriate to reach out to local providers and solicit that information, because I think everyone present would agree that that was a very beneficial discussion. So just to tell you a little bit about Miami-Dade Fire Rescue, and then to tell you how we're handling communications today and what we look forward to tomorrow. Miami-Dade Fire Rescue operates a dedicated fire rescue dispatch center that handles over 250,000 incidents annually spread out over 2,000 square miles. With just under 2,100 firefighters responding with over 150 frontline units from 70 fire stations, that includes 3 airports and the Port of Miami. We have a dedicated hazmat and technical rescue teams. We have a 200-person urban search and rescue team using 4 helicopters and marine services that include fire boats that cover 84 miles of oceanside coastline that includes 810 miles of intercoastal waterways and navigatable channels. So with that said, the communications devices that we use primarily today are, like most public safety, are LMR, but we've transitioned into and use a significant amount of LTE, including FirstNet, all of FirstNet. So we operate the largest municipal fire rescue LMR system in the country with over 50 sites, and our design build is designed specifically for strong in-building penetration. All frontline units have Sierra wireless devices that are utilized for GPS, LTE, and Wi-Fi. All of our those frontline units have mobile computer terminals, such as like a Panasonic Toughbook, which is primarily used for CAD connectivity as we dispatch by closest unit AVL. All of our units also carry a tablet, Panasonic tablet in this case, for EMS patient care reporting. That tablet itself also has a separate LTE card in it, which is FirstNet, and we can connect locally to the truck when necessary. We're currently working with FirstNet and AT&T for testing Sonim devices for push-to-talk capabilities at the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl is coming up in South Florida in Miami-Dade County on February 2nd. So our experience in the past with FirstNet, besides our standard every day that we utilize, I can tell you that some significant highlights come from our urban search and rescue team. Our urban search and rescue team has had multiple incidents over the past 18 months that we've responded to, where actually in some cases the FirstNet deployables were on site before our team arrived, which is very impressive. Beating our guys and gals to a disaster is some feat, and having that connectivity stood up when we arrive or near when we arrive has been significant for our folks, not only from an operational perspective, but a personal perspective for our people. As stated a minute ago, we are working with FirstNet and AT&T on the Super Bowl. We, in addition to our LMR device, our radio system that we'll be using, all of our teams will be carrying push-to-talk devices during the event too, so we can use them concurrently. What came out of yesterday's discussion also is that public safety realizes that the path for FirstNet, as Sheriff Miller alluded to a second ago, is not immediate, is more of a marathon than a sprint. And we look forward to the broadband evolution that's in front of us. It's changed as recently as in the past 24 months since this has gotten started. And again, we look forward to it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief. I'm going to open the floor. Are you willing to take questions from the floor? Okay. Dave? Or Rich?
No, I just wanted to compliment Chief Rubin, and you can see why the International Fire Chiefs has put Chief Rubin as the chair of the Communications Committee, which is one of our largest committees and very important to us, and brings so much to the FirstNet board, and looking forward to him being on the PSAC finally. And so looking forward to more things. But you can see his passion, not just for the fire service, but for public safety. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Anyone? One of the things that were discussed yesterday were the development of the hardened, or let's call it tough devices, the rugged devices, and the requirements that are somewhat unique between the services, but yet really the result has to be the same, which is absolute communications when you need it and how you need it. And I'm wondering if you could take a moment to talk about kind of the ruggedizing criteria that you mentioned yesterday, which is firefighter down and...
Absolutely. So what we've learned over time is that a radio, an LMR device as we use it today, the end goal is for the person on the other side to be able to hear the communications part, but how it gets there and the device itself is another story. Police officers, law enforcement typically want a smaller device. They wear it on their person with a lot of other equipment on a belt, and it needs to be streamlined and they need to have different functionality, whereas firefighters want or need ruggedized devices that have larger knobs, larger buttons, larger screens. We are typically in hazardous environments that affect our vision and affect our hearing, and having the different devices designed for what we need is very important. So a radio isn't necessarily a radio, or a communications device isn't necessarily a communications device that's acceptable for both police and fire. One of the discussions that was mentioned yesterday regarding operational need was how, again, we use them differently. Law enforcement, at least in South Florida, typically moves the discussion to an open environment, if possible, outside or that type of thing, whereas fire typically handles inside a structure, and in-building penetration is very, very important to us. Not suggest it's not important for law enforcement, but the majority of our times, a lot of our times, in an urban environment, we are working indoors. So a system designed to communicate for the fire service must be able to penetrate inside a building to the point where if the radio, in this case, or communications device is attached to the firefighter, let's say on their chest, and they're lying face down with an air pack attached to them and inside a building, it needs to have the communications, the capability, the network behind it to reach back to the incident commander, the dispatcher to call for help or whatever is necessary. So from the fire service perspective, in an urban environment, in-building communications is extremely critical.
And ruggedized devices. Neil?
And ruggedized devices too, absolutely.
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment. First of all, thank you for yesterday. It was really, really educational to me, and I think the whole members of my technology committee got a lot out of it yesterday. We really appreciate that. So what we are doing and things that we look at as to what you told us yesterday, we have a whole new set of engineering guidelines that we'll be doing for RF and RF building deployments when we go to 5G. I mean, this is very important information for us because in the old realm of 1 through 4G, it's been blasted into the building. With interference and speed and latency that we're looking at with 5G, a lot of the RF architectures, RF engineering, is to keep the outside RF out and develop a whole new network inside the building. And these are the techniques that we look at, and part of the technology committee is that we look at these forward-looking architectures to solve the very problems that you talked about yesterday. So I just want to give you assurance that we at FirstNet, as we evolve this network, we will be deploying these types of innovative RF mechanisms that we learn as we go into the next generation. So again, yesterday was very important for me to listen. I got a lot out of the different types of devices. I'm just surprised that nobody did Sheriff Stanek about wanting a Dunkin' Donut app on the police. But anyway,
Okay.
I do appreciate the whole group yesterday coming in. But it's good for us to hear and how you use it because it enables us to then go back as we go into the standards arena and as we work with our partner on RF architectures on how we're going to deploy this next generation. Because part of this is keeping this network, on the leading edge. Because what you'll see with 5G will be unbelievable.
Jeff, I thought maybe you might want to comment on the process of getting the devices ruggedized and how we're working with AT&T and with PSCR as they're looking at the future. And
Absolutely.
It's really about 4G deployment first and then in-building penetration and making sure the devices are meet the needs of the customer.
Absolutely. And thanks again, Chief Rubin, for the discussion yesterday. It was fantastic. And I think you've reaffirmed as we were developing the RFP and the objectives that public safety told us match exactly what you said yesterday. There's no one size fits all for all disciplines in public safety because there's such a broad array of use cases for that. But what we are happy with and very proud of is driving that band 14 spectrum, the public safety spectrum, into a broad array of devices that are now over 100 plus, listed through the NIST process for FirstNet. We're also working closely, to your point, on ruggedized devices. We did have some new entrants into this field that have some ruggedized devices. We know there are more coming. So that's, in my opinion, a key challenge that we'll continue to face, especially the fire service and a few others that need those type of devices. The PSCR program at NIST is also providing R&D funding to companies in this hardening area, and we look forward to seeing the outcomes of their push for vendors that may have not thought about public safety as a key component of their portfolio, But with the power of FirstNet and what we're able to do with consolidating this as a nationwide platform, we're seeing new entrants to that space all the time. So thanks again for your comments, and we take those to heart.
Thank you.
Thank you. I look forward to working with you on the PSAC as well. And with that, maybe turn it over to Todd Early, who's PSAC chairman, for an update on what's going on in PSAC.
Mr. Chair, board members, good morning. Todd Early, chairman of the Public Safety Advisory Committee. It's an honor to serve as the chair of the Public Safety Advisory Committee, and I appreciate the opportunity to give you a very brief update on the great work that the Public Safety Advisory Committee and the Tribal Working Group have been doing over the last several months. First, I'd like to update you on the Tribal Working Group. And since our last meeting, the Tribal Working Group held an in-person meeting in Anchorage, Alaska on September the 10th and September the 11th. During that meeting, we received updates from the FirstNet Authority's product team. This group discussed use cases from delegates, which was extremely important and really, gave us the opportunity to hear of the true need of FirstNet in tribal land as well as proposed updates to the FirstNet Authority's tribal consultation policy, and really developed the framework for tribal-specific preparing for public safety broadband document, which was really important. There was a lot of discussion centered around the roadmap. And the work coming forward out of that group will be centered around the roadmap that was just released by the FirstNet Authority and the 6 domains within that roadmap. And this group's going to resume their monthly teleconference schedule in January, and we'll hold another in-person meeting in February. I'd like to now update you on some of the work that the full body of the Public Safety Advisory Committee has been performing. As you know, during 2019, we continued our webinar series that began in 2018. We shifted to a bi-monthly cadence to help us incorporate the 2 yearly in-person meetings that we had. These webinars are really important, and I appreciate the board's participation in those as well when you can, because it really provides a great avenue for stakeholder engagement and really an opportunity for us to provide feedback and into the work that the FirstNet Authority doing, the FirstNet AT&T, and really give information and findings back from our operational and technical best practices. This year, during those webinars, the PSAC discussed mission critical video, a lot of discussion centered around the FirstNet Authority roadmap. We appreciate the opportunity to provide input into that roadmap on where these public safety first responders and associations and what they're dealing with and what they value and feel is extremely important into that. Had discussion centered around standards. A lot of discussion around telehealth that I'll discuss here in a minute, as well as the disaster response and deployable program. The Public Safety Advisory Committee, as I discussed earlier, meets 2 times each year in person. And during those meetings, we hear updates from the FirstNet Authority, AT&T leadership. We held a meeting in June of 2019 in Bedminster, New Jersey. During that meeting, we got to hear updates from the authority, from FirstNet AT&T. We also got to tour the Global Network Operations Center in Bedminster. And if you've never been at that Network Operations Center, it's a great place to go and really see the true value and the focus on securing this network that's being built for public safety. It's something to really see, and was really a great meeting. We also, during that meeting, had a lot of breakout sessions really centered around the roadmap and validating the input that Dave and the PSA team have been out there working extremely hard to seek that input from public safety and validate that before it went to the board for a vote and release. As you know, that was just released. New to the Public Safety Advisory Committee this year is we formulated what we call strike teams. And those strike teams are very valuable. It allows us the chance to pull a group of subject matter experts together, really focus in on a task, and have a quick turnaround and great input from a small number of PSAC members to really validate or focus on the need, whether it comes from the FirstNet CTO team, whether it comes from AT&T, FirstNet, and really turn those around. A couple of the strike team experiences that we had just here recently, we formulated a group that in May went to the FirstNet Experience Center in Boulder, Colorado that's being stood up. We had 15 members of the PSAC there for that, and really we appreciated the opportunity, but allowed us to really understand what is being built in the Experience Center in Boulder, but also we appreciated the opportunity to provide input and feedback into that experience program to hear from the members on what they thought was important from a technical and an operational standpoint into that experience center, and was really good. We also formulated a telehealth later this summer, strike team on telehealth. We had input from the FirstNet Authority subject matter experts. We had 5 PSAC members on this team, and I want to thank my colleague John Olson from the Executive Committee for leading this as well. But they held several teleconference meetings and developed a paramedic chief language to examine telehealth in the context of the emergency triage, treat and transport initiative as introduced by the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. This work and the work that was done resulted in the development of a slick sheet that was used at the EMS World Expo 2019 in New Orleans, and most recently has been posted on the .gov blog website. A lot of great information into how this network is really going to advance telehealth in the years to come, and the value that it brings. So really excited about the work that group has done as well, and appreciate all their hard work on that. Lastly, we are holding our next in-person Public Safety Advisory Committee meeting in Austin next week. Look forward to many of you here in the room being in Austin with us, and look forward to our new members being there. Chief Rubin, glad to have you as the newest member of the PSAC on there as well. During this meeting, we're going to hear updates from FirstNet Authority leadership, also from the Chief Technology Office and PSA teams on the great work that they're doing and what's being done ahead in the year and what that looks like. We're going to have AT&T FirstNet leadership there with us to discuss their roadmap and what they're doing as well, and then tribal working group activities. And then we'll be having some discussion on the future of the webinar series and the strike teams that we're going to formulate for the upcoming year. So, and then there'll be some discussion also centered around the roadmap. So appreciate the opportunity to provide the update, and I'll answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Todd. Any comments or questions? Paul.
Yeah, I just want to take a moment to congratulate Todd for his great leadership of the PSAC. As you know, I was the acting chair and heavily involved in that before I was appointed to the board. And Todd has taken it and just moved in directions much further and grander than I'd ever even anticipated. So thanks to Todd for doing that, and to your team. Thank you.
Rich.
Todd, I know that you mentioned Chief Rubin. You had a couple other additions to PSAC, new members. Who are they again?
ICP has just proposed a delegate that has been submitted for Chair Horowitz's consideration as well. And I believe there's one other, but I don't recall. Dave, do you know? Okay.
Yeah. So I just, again, also I'd like to echo Paul's comments with Todd's chairmanship, and also first the executive committee of the PSAC and their dedication and devotion, but also to the whole PSAC for their activity. And lastly, to the board itself, because the board gets a lot. If you have the opportunity to join the webinars, you will learn something. If you have an opportunity to go to the in-person meetings, you will learn something, as well as be able to contribute to their direction. And I'd like to continue to encourage the board to do so. The board has been quite active in its engagement. What can I say? I think it's goes above and beyond kind of a normal board's show up for 4 meetings a year is not what this board's about. This board is about advancing a mission. And in order to advance that mission, you got to get close to the subject matter experts, and the PSAC is a terrific way to do that. So thank you, Todd.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, Ed.
Jim, if you don't mind just going back one slide, please. One of the things that makes the PSAC so important is the strategic direction that the PSAC provides the FirstNet Authority in the direction, the focus, and the prioritization of the respective range that the roadmap has provided us. If you look at the strike team on the right-hand side there, telehealth, you'll recall we signed an MOU with the University of Mississippi to focus in on telehealth, rural telemedicine. And it's really not only those strategic partnerships that we plan to make with others around the country, but it's the expertise that the PSAC does provide the authority in understanding where the areas that we should be focusing in on and how do we get there. And I think that just is a clearest indication of the close working relationship that the authority has, not only with the PSAC in particular, but with public safety. And it's public safety that is driving the strategic direction of the authority. And that's something that we certainly, Jeff and I, share in terms of our vision of where we need to go from the management perspective. So I just felt that would be an important piece to raise. Thank you.
Thanks, Ed. That's, can't say it enough times. 7 times is what I believe the cadence needs to be to really get a message understood and heard. That's number 4. So 3 more to go. So with that, I'm going to turn over to our discussions to the accomplishments for 2019. And as chairman of the Governance and Personnel Committee, I'm pleased to introduce our 2 newest members to the board, Ms. Karima Holmes and Chief Matt Slinkard. Ms. Holmes is the director of the Office of Unified Communications in Washington, D.C., and takes the place of former board member Tara Takai. Chief Matt Slinkard is the Executive Assistant Chief of Police for the Houston Police Department and will complete the term of the former board member Commissioner Richard Ross. Karima, would you care to say a few words, please?
Oh, sure. First, it's an absolute honor to be here. I'm really excited as a new board member just to envelop myself in this meaningful mission. In the short time that I've been on the board, I'm really excited because, as I expected, the partnership with the board, the authority, and AT&T is priceless to the public safety community and the communication needs and stability of a broadband network that we've longed for. And so, I just want to say that the board, the authority, you guys have a right to be excited and celebrate the accomplishments that have come to fruition. And I'm really excited to be a part of the dynamic accomplishments that I know is coming. So, thank you.
Thank you, Karima, and welcome. We look forward to working with you, but not only working with you, but sucking everything we can out of your brain so that we have a good understanding of what we need to do in the emergency communications perspective. Chief Slinkard, would you care to say a few words?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, everyone. I want to first thank everybody for the warm welcome, all the board members. The communication thus far has been outstanding. It's been great, even better than I expected, and I think it's a testament to all the work that you've put in thus far. Very excited to be a part of this journey. For somebody that's dedicated their entire professional life to law enforcement and public service, going on 26 years now in law enforcement, this is an amazing time for public safety. And so as a new board member, I hope you can feel the energy from myself and Karima and how excited we have been. She and I have already talked several times about what's happening for public safety. For the first time that any of us can remember in our professional lives, public safety is not an afterthought when it comes to the technology and the communication that we need. And, I would leave you with this. Ultimately, as I continue to engage and serve on the Technology Committee and then the Advocacy Committee, which I'm excited about, I hope to bring something and bring some value to that. But at the end of the day, everything that we're building is for public safety, but ultimately it's for public safety, so at the end of the day, we can provide better service to the citizens of this great nation. And that's the true end user of this effort. The true end user is all of the citizens that we serve and protect every single day that will benefit from what's happening with this network for public safety. So thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Thank you and welcome. And your experience with major city chiefs is going to be really critical. And of course, you chair the Technology Committee of Major City Chiefs, so we're going to take full advantage of that. And don't worry, we're not a shy organization. So with the addition of Ms. Holmes and Chief Slinkard to the board, as well as Vincent De Laurentiis, the new federal board member designee for the Department of Homeland Security, we have updated the membership of each of our board committees. So also I want to note that Dana Wade has left her position at OMB, and we're waiting for a new federal board member to be designated by OMB. I believe the person has been selected, but he has to go through a process in order to be officially designated. So on some of the committee assignments, Tip Ostertaylor will serve on the Governance and Personnel Committee in addition to his role as chairing the Finance Committee. Karima and Chief Slinkard will both join Sheriff Stanik's Public Safety Advocacy Committee, and Vince De Laurentiis and Matt will join the Technology Committee. So I'd now like to turn the meeting over to Jeff Bratcher, please, to highlight the FirstNet Authority's priorities and accomplishments for 2019.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Board, for allowing us to provide some updates today. Ed Parkinson and I are going to switch off on this presentation, so I'm going to have Ed start with the priorities, looking back at what we said we were going to do in 2019.
Thanks, Jeff. And it's more than just obviously the priorities, it's the accomplishments that I think the board and the association, I beg your pardon, the authority were able to really put forward and achieve in 2019. The goals, when you look at the entire ecosystem, public safety, industry, the impact we would have on the community were immense. And strategically aligning to these 5 core areas was very important. Strengthening the FirstNet experience by providing oversight over our partner, while at the same time working with them to ensure that public safety received the best service possible from the network was a key accomplishment that we were looking to try and achieve in 2019. Parallel with that is our engagement with public safety that was led by Dave Buchanan and the Public Safety Advocacy Committee. Dave's going to go into a bit more detail later on, but the thousands of events that were held, the tens of thousands of public safety individuals who were engaged with by the FirstNet Authority is just a small snapshot into the collective work that the authority tried to achieve in 2019. No small feat, because again, as in my earlier comment regarding telemedicine, telehealth, it is public safety that drove the development of the roadmap, which led to the board initiating the strategic investments that we kickstarted 3 months ago. This industry engagement too was a key component because we, for the first time, as you heard Chief Slinkard talk about, public safety is now at the forefront of technology. And by bringing together the ingenuity of the American marketplace and in the American industry and combining that with the needs of public safety, it's clear that the public safety broadband market has grown immensely in 2019 and showing the industry that public safety, there's a valuable market there, so they can make strategic investments into this place, while at the same time showing public safety that we now are pushing industry to provide products and services that will be able to better serve public safety is a really, really important part of the dynamic relationship that we're trying to achieve, not only between public safety, but industry as well. And as I mentioned before, that engagement with public safety, which led to the development of the roadmap and kickstarted our strategic investment process that we initiated back in September. These investments are the first of many that will come through FirstNet in future, but it was important to start this process so that we could better understand how FirstNet, the authority, would engage not only with public safety, but also with industry to identify strategic investments that made the most sense at that particular time. And enterprise support. We can't do this without being highly strategic in looking at a fairly wide aperture of how FirstNet can engage not only internally with the FirstNet Authority, but with the Department of Commerce and with our partners across the federal, state, local, and tribal governments, ensuring that we can align our needs and objectives to those that are out there in the field, and knowing where our strategic partners are is highly, highly important. So by focusing on these 5 core areas in 2019, by releasing the roadmap, it gives, I feel, a clear indication of where the authority is looking to go, not only over the course of the last 12 months, but where we hope to achieve in 2020. And we'll touch on that a little bit later.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Ed. And I would call your attention to the logos you see at the top of these. Those will follow through on the slides that we're going to go through and touch on some of these 5 areas and what we've been doing over the last year. Next slide, please. First, I'd like to start off with an announcement and press release that AT&T made earlier this week. We've updated these numbers to reflect the milestones they've now hit within this network. Again, we signed the contract and awarded the initial phase of this contract in March of 2017. And here we're 2.5 years later, a little more than that. And they have announced 1 million connections now on the FirstNet platform. Over 10,000 public safety agencies have now subscribed and are now using the FirstNet network. And as we talked about with Chief Rubin, this device ecosystem continues to grow. We have over 100 FirstNet ready devices now available. You can find those on the public NIST list that is made available on those devices, and how we're working with AT&T in the industry and ensuring those devices meet the needs, and more importantly, meet the band 14 spectrum needs. 675 plus markets now have the public safety spectrum, band 14, that they fought over 20 years ago. And I was chuckling earlier when Chief Harlan McEwen was mentioned. He led that charge, and I think he would be very pleased to know we're in over 675 markets now. That is over 92% of the total markets that the FCC defines. There's a total of 734 markets out there for the wireless industry in that spectrum, and that's how that's measured. AT&T's done a lot of testing with, I believe Ookla is the partner, testing this network, showing how this is faster with the priority and preemption capabilities for those FirstNet users on this network. And they've reached the milestones of 75% on that band 14 coverage completion. So they are pushing hard. I know they're pushing their vendors hard to get this spectrum out into the network and deployed across the country. So we're really excited and pleased with that progress. And they are approximately 6 to 9 months ahead of the planned schedule that we did sign in March of 2018 for that radio access network deployment. Over 100 plus applications in our FirstNet application catalog. The dedicated deployables, I think there was quite a bit of press yesterday and the day before. Very nice video on the new FirstNet One blimp that they have procured, and AT&T has invested into this network to make available for first responders. It's a fantastic platform. We look forward to seeing how that is used. And that's in addition to the 3 flying cows that they have added to the service, and then the 72 satellite Colt-based deployables that we procured through our contract. So very excited with that unique differentiated feature and capability for the first responders on this network. And then over 450 plus deployable requests, how they're actually leveraging those satellite Colt-based platforms available now for the FirstNet subscribers. So we're very tremendously happy with that progress. I'll turn it to also what you see here. We hosted our technology committee, as the Chairman Cox mentioned earlier. We showed them some of our initial undertakings in our experience center, looking to their input on how we design that. And it's not just about designing something in the Boulder, Colorado area. Yes, that's where our test and all of our network equipment, we have the live network there in our laboratory and this experience center. But we also want to bring that to the field, because not everyone, while I would like to fly everyone to Boulder, we're not going to be able to have everyone come out to Boulder to see what's there. So we're also working on how we expand that experience into the field with all of our field staff across the country. I mentioned the devices in the discussion with Chief Rubin, and the broad array of different devices now that are available that include band 14, whether it's a hotspot, an in-vehicle router, laptops that now have embedded FirstNet capabilities, the smartphones, some of the ruggedized handhelds that are now on the market, and then the tablets that are now all have incorporated LTE, and specifically that band 14 spectrum for public safety communications. And then on the top left to round this out is the applications catalog. We are very happy with the developer community. They are now focused in the public safety market as well on some of the applications that may not have, in their minds, did not think of a public safety leverage or use of it. And now they're realizing this is a market. We should address this market. And going through the certification process and having their application and source code tested for security vulnerabilities is making that better for public safety. Next slide, please. I'm going to turn it over now to Dave Buchanan, who's going to touch on our public safety advocacy accomplishments.
Sure. Thanks, Jeff, and thank you, Chairman Horowitz and the board, for the opportunity to brief you today. I want to say I think we had a terrific year and met our objectives for 2019 in engaging public safety, using those engagements to capture their feedback and sentiment about the network, and using that feedback and sentiment to help us improve and enhance the network through the roadmap and through our future investments. So I'm pleased with what we accomplished. Our team was able to, through the leadership of the Public Safety Advocacy Committee and our team engage in all 56 states and territories, over 1,100 different engagements with 33,000 public safety personnel. Work very hard to hit a diverse group of public safety agencies and individuals at all levels of government, rural, urban, east, west, north, and south, and think that's a really important aspect of how we go about and do this work. We also work to capture the feedback from those meetings, so they're not just handshakes and good meetings, but we're using these engagements as a place to capture feedback about operational use for the network today and needs and requirements for the network for the future, so we can best advocate for public safety and the operational deployment of this network today and tomorrow. And then we use those and used this year those feedback, the thousands of pieces of feedback we got from the 1,100 engagements to inform our roadmap, which we released here at the board meeting in August, and inform our investments, which we discussed at the board meeting in September, to ensure that those documents and those artifacts fully reflect public safety's needs. And I think that's a really key attribute that this FirstNet Authority was able to accomplish this year, and I'm pleased we were able to play an important part in making sure public safety's needs for the network today and for the network tomorrow are reflected in those documents and investments as we go forward to fully operationalize this network for public safety. On the next slide, you see a number of the events that we asked our board members who sit on the Public Safety Advocacy Committee to help us execute. We have a great partnership with all of you and your willingness to go on the road and help us really amplify the message and provide leadership in these different settings, whether it's Paul Patrick at a state meeting or Chief Carrizo or Brian Crawford at the FRI meeting or Sheriff Stanek at IACP and at National Sheriff's Association. Our public safety board members have really done a yeoman's work for helping us, again, bring the message to public safety, bring their leadership and expertise to the public safety community. Sheriff Stanek, I don't know if you wanted to add any comments about some of the things we were able to do this year, or any of the other committee members make some comments about these activities.
Yeah, just brief. Thank you, Dave. And Mr. Chair and members, I will just say that the Advocacy Committee has been hard at work, and I'm really impressed with the enthusiasm from the committee members as well as the rest of the board. I mean, a number of you have stepped up to go out to engagements across this country. It means a lot when a firefighter gets to talk to other firefighters. It means a lot when an EMS provider and a sheriff and a police officer gets to talk to their colleagues across the country. I think that, you know, during 2019 here and moving into 2020, we will continue. That roadmap that was released here at the board meeting just a few months ago is now ingrained in the public safety across this country. Those pillars of that roadmap, I know them by heart because I've heard Dave go over them over and over, at least 7 times, maybe 70 times, Mr. Chair. But that is really, you know, that is kind of where we're at. This board wanted a strategic plan, a roadmap, something to follow, and we are following it very carefully. Again, Dave and his team, and he's got a number of folks that work with him and for him. They will continue through 2020 to get this message out. I told Dave when I went to the PERF and Major City Chiefs meeting back in the spring, I think we're in Miami Beach or somewhere down here in Florida. Thank you very much. It was the first time that it really occurred to me that people weren't asking what FirstNet was anymore, who are you, but rather they were asking, look, you know, how do we sign up? Where do we find information? How do we get technical assistance? That was a sea change over the last 5 or 6 years from what FirstNet was doing and we were doing on behalf of outreach and Public Safety Advocacy Committee, and now just Advocacy Committee prior to that. So that I say thank you, David, to you and your team. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for putting the trust in this committee to be able to reach out across the country to our public safety peers. We will continue our work through 2020. Thank you.
Thanks, Rich.
Thank you.
Paul, do you want to say something, or?
No, I just want to echo what the sheriff said, and really appreciate not only Dave, who does a great job, and also his team. It's just amazing every time that we go out to present or we're at these meetings, that the support that we have, not only that we have if we're at the meeting or that we have received in advance. The biggest thing to me is that we go in very prepared, and that's something that thanks to you and to your team, and really do appreciate that, and also find it's very rewarding to have the people who attend come and comment on the information as board members that we've been able to present and how helpful it was to them. And so that's something that I think is critical for us to continue to do.
Thanks, Paul. I want to, before you continue on, Dave or Jeff, I just want to take note of the 1 million connections and the 10,000 agencies. You know, you don't get there easily. And AT&T is ahead of schedule in the build-out. I maintain that there's some really tough areas they still have to build out, so all I'm looking for them to do is be on schedule and maintain the momentum that's been built up in the awareness. But the awareness really comes from the activities of the public safety outreach, because getting people together, getting them to talk, understanding the areas of opportunity and of difficulty and what it's going to take for adoption are critical. But we do have a metric now, 1 million. 1 million is a real metric. 10,000 is a real metric. Yes, the opportunity may be, you know, with extended primary, maybe 10 times that, but it is 1 million.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dave, thanks again, and my thanks as well, and I know Ed as well, for all the work your staff does out in the field every day. So thank you again. I'll go to some updates, and I'm going to have Mark Golashevsky, who works in the technology team as well, work with me on the next couple of slides to show some of the great work that we're doing collaboratively with the Public Safety Communications Research Program within NIST. For those that don't recall, they did, out of the legislation, get awarded $300 million to continue to drive future needs into this network and leverage that funding to different institutions and industry to drive that. Most recently, I had the honor of participating in their haptic interface for public safety challenge. So the picture there on the top left, we're in full turnout gear. We have 3 firefighters from the local Denver Fire Department. West Metro Fire is the facility you see on the right. That is their training center in Denver, Colorado. Fantastic facility. And this event was focused on stimulating the senses of touch and motion to provide first responders with nonverbal tactile stimuli or sensations. Simply put, for those of you that have Apple Watches or smart watches, that vibration is what haptics is. So how could they incorporate that? That was the challenge. And this was based on public safety's needs. So when PSCR set up their program, they did a stakeholder conference with public safety and said, what areas should we focus on? And this is one of those areas in that enhanced user interface. So this was a challenge to leverage haptics into the personal protective equipment of firefighters for testing in smoky buildings to help navigate simulated fire grounds to locate a victim and successfully rescue that person out of the building in that environment, leveraging haptics. No audio, no communications, it was all based on haptics. So the judges included, as I mentioned, active firefighters, communication specialists, myself from the FirstNet Authority, but there was work, this was a 9-month lead up to developing this challenge, and there were, I can't remember how many teams they started with, I think it was over 10. Ultimately, the winning solution was Carnegie Mellon University, and they developed haptic sensors that fit into the protective hat, the band that holds the hat on the firefighter's head. And it was able to pulse in certain locations to give directions through the building to find the downed victim and get that victim back out of the building. It was a fantastic challenge. It was an area that they, as I mentioned earlier, did not think, okay, what is the public safety application of haptics? A lot of that development's being done in the gaming community now, but they realized, oh, this challenge were aware maybe we could do something with public safety. So it was a fantastic event. And again, we have Carnegie Mellon University as well as several others that focused and developed teams to develop this technology. So I see some tremendous future thinking in using haptics, how that can save not only save the lives of firefighters, but get them better situational awareness without relying on voice comms. It's something that you can feel, and it was a great competition. Carnegie Mellon received, scroll my notes here. So they received $25,000 for first place and another $3,500 because the judges all felt that its prototype met the criteria and most commercially promising among the developers. There was another team, its name was Happily, and they received $20,000 for second place, and they actually outfitted a glove with haptic sensors and gave directions on how to get to the victim through that glove interface. And then third but not least was the Engineering Dynamics team, and they received $15,000 for placing third. So we're very fortunate to have this partnership with PSER, leveraging what they're doing, working with public safety directly to design these challenges and move that forward. We look to involve the board and the technology committee as we have with all of their challenges and how they're awarding this funding going forward, and look forward to their upcoming conference in June. Now I'd like to turn it over to Mark, and he's going to give a quick update on another collaborative effort that we've been doing and recently announced. So Mark, please take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. In the year ahead, we're going to continue our engagement with industry, academia, and the wider public safety technology ecosystem to understand where the market is going and to bring innovations to the forefront that are focused on public safety's needs. An example of this is an innovative new grant program just announced in the past month and a half, known as the Accelerate R2 Network Challenge, depicted here in the lower half of the slide. This is a collaborative effort between the National Institute of Standards and Technology, the U.S. Economic Development Administration, and the FirstNet Authority. This grant program is to fund the creation of a nationwide network to connect organizations and stakeholders to address the nation's most pressing disaster response and resiliency, or R2, challenges with innovative technologies. The program defines response innovation as new solutions in the communications, technology, and equipment first responders use when responding to disasters and events. Resiliency innovation is developing new ways to build, protect, and connect networks and infrastructure to help communities recover and build readiness and resilience in the face of future disasters. The target for this program is to make awards in May of 2020. Next slide, please. The Tech to Protect Challenge is an open innovation challenge hosted by our peers at PSER. It's an exciting approach with a series of 6-month codeathons as opposed to 48-hour hackathons. There are 10 public safety contests. Examples include augmented reality to save trapped passengers, voice commands to virtual assistants, and tracking patient triage. FirstNet Authority staff helped to develop the contests, the rules, the evaluation criteria, and in addition, staff are participating as reviewers and judges of these contests. This challenge is still ongoing. 10 in-person codeathons have already been held across the U.S., plus a virtual online competition closed on November 15th. The review process has started, and with final award and competition in April of 2020. The pictures here are of first responders and developers who participated in codeathons in Seattle, San Francisco, and Los Angeles. One of the 10 codeathons was held in Miami last month, and the following is a short video from that event.
Austin Handel. I'm a full-time police officer in the North Atlanta area in Georgia. I'm a FirstNet subscriber, and I'm also a developer, and I'm here at the Tech to Protect Challenge trying to develop new technology to help first responders across the country.
Miami-Dade Fire Rescue is honored to participate in the Tech to Protect. We have a team there to work as advisors. There are various scenarios, including those specifically related to the fire service, and emergency medical services.
Having first responders actually on the ground with the developers was important because it allowed the developers to put on the first responder gear, see the equipment that they use, actually lay their hands on it, and understand how their solutions, the solutions that they're creating that is, might actually be used by first responders.
The Miami-Dade Police Department is going to be an active participant in the Tech to Protect Challenge. I'm going to be there, and my staff is going to be there to serve as technical advisors for the participants. I'm going to be serving in the role of a reviewer. That is a critical piece because that is going to feed into the ultimate judging and whether or not they win the challenge.
Here at the Tech Protect Challenge, I am developing something to answer contest number 6, which is a hands-free voice assistant for first responders. A better way to do all the things that we already do without eliminating a dispatch center, and to make it so that way we can push forward into the digital frontier that law enforcement is just about to enter into.
With any of these types of challenges, advanced technology is very important for public safety because it enhances our capabilities. You know, some of the threads that they're going to be looking at addressing in the Tech to Protect Challenge deal with location identification, you know, triaging of patients. These are huge things for us to be able to respond to a multi-story building and be able to know what floor that person's on is a humongous thing. Being able to adequately triage patients for the fire department is a huge thing because then they can better address their issues that they're dealing with there and let the hospitals and wherever they're transporting know, you know, what the situations are. These are life-saving technologies.
So this has been an important year with tremendous growth and development of the FirstNet network, the initial network investments, and new technologies being brought to the wireless marketplace. With all this progress and change, the Technology Committee has been an invaluable resource for management and staff on a variety of key topics and technologies. And with that, I'm pleased to hand it over to Technology Chair Neil Cox.
Thank you, Mark. First thing I'd like to do is to thank all the members of the Technology Committee for their efforts through 2019. I thought we had a very productive year. I'd like to highlight a few things that come to mind. And just to refresh everybody, the Technology Committee not only looks at the day-to-day operation, how the network is performing, where the coverage issues are, where the interference issues are, and we try to stay abreast of that and work with management for solutions. But we also look out ahead. We look out, we're trying to spend more time now that we have a network up and working, is to look out ahead at where this technology and where this network needs to evolve to. And one of the things I'll talk about first is that one of the, you can almost say the forefathers of this network now, one of the wisest decisions that we made was to have our own dedicated core. And I can't stress the importance that this network stands on its own. This is a dedicated network for public safety with a dedicated core. And that core is very robust. It's it's self-healing, and if there's ever a fiber cut or whatever, it just reroutes and takes care of itself. And then we're starting to see, you've heard about how many applications that we now have, and it was kind of interesting because we had a technology meeting prior to yesterday's round session, and we were talking in that meeting of how important it was to know visually which organizations have already signed up for FirstNet. And then we went to the round session, and then the chief brought up that not only would like to know that, but they'd like to know what applications those organizations are using, which is it's amazing that we think about how personnel move between organizations. Now we not only do they have FirstNet, but what applications do they have on their devices, so we can maybe get our application downloaded before our personnel ends up there, theirs ends up here, which is very refreshing to know that first responders are thinking like that. That's very, very important to know. Devices. We get to see things in the laboratory that Jeff brings in that are under NDA that we can't talk about. But I tell you, the next generation of push-to-talk devices on Band 14 LTE FirstNet are phenomenal. And I don't know if they'll go all the way to what public safety wants to replace LMR, but it's getting very, very close. And when we saw it and we held it in our hands and looked at it, it's amazing what this next generation of devices will do. Well, Jeff talked about the Innovation Lab and the FirstNet Experience Program. What we have demonstrated with this FirstNet network in the lab and through the Technology Committee, if I would have had this type of performance with a network that I was selling to the public against competitors, I'd have a billboard every 50 feet advertising how phenomenal this network is. When we stress it, we compare it against commercial networks and all commercial networks we compare it with, and it is not even in the same league. So I wish we could advertise that everywhere. I don't think people would like to. We do say it is the highest and the fastest performing network, which it is, but it's not even in the same league as a commercial network. And then when you start putting loads on the commercial network, then it really does separate and become a completely different type network. 5G, the Technology Committee is very committed to 5G architectures, especially on the RF side. How it's going to be deployed. As I talked earlier, we spent so much time trying to get signal into buildings. Now the next generation might be to get signal out of the building and build completely different networks inside buildings. So you should be assured that the Technology Committee, along with the management of FirstNet, we're going to work, and we're going to do it at the right time. We're not going to try to run out and do something that doesn't make any sense. We're going to do it at the right time. And I think Chairman Horowitz has made that very clear. It's not like we want to run out and have the first 4K TV, which people were charging $3,000 and there was no programming. Now they're $300 and there's still only 2 programs. Our first wireless handheld device cost $3,500 when we launched them in Chicago, and then a year later they were $500. So, we'll do it at the right time for public safety. It will be, I can assure you, it will be mission critical 5G. It will be standards based that will enable vendors and everyone to build towards this network. And that's one of the commitments and one of our strategies going into 2020, because you're going to hear a lot about 5G in the upcoming year. A lot of what you hear now is just hype. It's really not commercial 5G, it's proprietary, but we will have this network, and one of our commitments and one of our responsibilities in the Act is to have this network evolve. And we will do that, and we will do it at the right time for public safety. But our first goal is to get that coverage out there today, get it working, make this network the best network that it can be, and that's our commitment from the Technology Committee. We've also had a lot of outreach by the committee members. General Chase hosted us down in Georgia at the Cyber Center in Augusta, Georgia. It was phenomenal to look at what was going on there. You learn a lot from these visits. We've been to, obviously, we talked about the GNOC and the PSAC, which again, the PSAC is an invaluable resource to this organization. And the last thing is the PCSR stakeholder conference in Chicago, where you saw a lot of different universities and entrepreneurs looking at technologies for first responders. I mean, I was just blown away yesterday, even during our round session, about what they were doing here on the school buses and how they were using FirstNet and cameras and being able to control the Wi-Fi on a bus and then go to the video in case of an accident over the FirstNet network. Those are the kind of things that make this invaluable. And I can't stress the fact that, this is public safety's network, and you can play with it like this. You can't do nobody else's network is going to let you do this. So, Sheriff Miller, I congratulate you and thank you for the kind comments. But it's the technology of this network is second to none. And we're very fortunate to have a partner that let us jump on the backs of their existing networks and build this thing, because it's rolling out much faster than anybody had ever anticipated we were able to do. But it will get better and better and better, and this network is for public safety. So with that, I will turn it back to Ed, or Jeff, do you want to make a comment?
Yes. Thank you, Chairman Cox, and Mark, thanks again to the team. I know they spend a lot of time working on all these areas with public safety, and my thanks to public safety as well. I'll turn it over to Ed Parkinson now for updates on the roadmap, and we will finish out the senior management part of this. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it. Again, just to reiterate the type of engagements we had with public safety, with industry, and really focusing on those three top priority areas: the network, public safety engagement, and obviously industry engagement. Over 1,000 events were held across the country, really, which led to the creation of the roadmap. It's been downloaded over 5,500 times from the FirstNet.gov website. If you are watching and you haven't downloaded it, please do go to the website and download it, take a look, and see how your agency, see how you as an individual can play a role in engaging with FirstNet through the FirstNet roadmap. It's been a tremendously useful tool, and again, one that's guiding the organization. Slide. We've also been able to focus, as I mentioned before, on our investments based off the engagement we've had with public safety and how it's flowed through the roadmap. Back in September, the board initiated our processes towards the first two investments, the first one expanding the MPSBN's deployable fleet, and the latter kickstarting our investments in the 5G core. Those two investments still remain in the procurement process, and so due to the federal procurement rules, we're unable to engage more into the details, but we continue to have negotiations on those and certainly look forward to bringing those forward with more news on that in the future. Next slide. And so with that, I'll pass over to Kim Farrington, our CFO.
Thank you, Ed. What I'm going to do now is just give you an update on our enterprise support priority and an update on how we've done for fiscal year 19 and our financial results. As you can see from this graphic, the board approved an obligations budget for us for fiscal year 19 of $81 million, represented by that red line at the top. Last year, the board also approved an expense budget of $76.5 million, represented by the green line at the top. Below those lines, you see our cumulative results by month throughout the whole fiscal year for 2019. Which brings us to the last couple bars on the far right, representing the whole fiscal year. The blue bar represents our execution of our obligations, which equated to $68 million of the total $81 million obligations budget approved by the board. Our expenses came up to $60.6 million executed against that $76.5 million expense budget. There is a variance here of about $13 million, but there is justification for this variance. First, as you may remember back, we had a permanent CEO that left us October 1st of last year. Throughout this fiscal year, we've had interim CEOs, and because we had an interim area throughout the whole fiscal year, we actually purposely forewent hiring vacancies and hiring behind people who have left just until we received and heard who our new CEO would be. So we did have a variance due to those vacant positions that rolled throughout the fiscal year. The other predominant reason for the variance is related to contracts. We did have our plan per month for the contract execution, but we had two material contracts that were not able to make it through the whole acquisition process before the end of the fiscal year last year that ended September 30th. These two material contracts will be obligated or plan to be obligated in fiscal year 20, but again, they were not executed by the end of last fiscal year. The good news about these variances is that we do not lose these funds. The unobligated balance, they will actually carry over to next year and future fiscal years in support of the operations budget and also reinvestment back into the network. So that is the financial results for fiscal year 19. And we couldn't have had such a good, solid financial year without the support of the Finance Committee, a part of this board. Many accomplishments can be described with regard to the Finance Committee. And I would like to now turn it over to Tip to talk about those accomplishments if there are no questions on the cumulative financial results for fiscal year 19.
Okay, thank you, Kim. The slide that we're on is Finance Committee accomplishments. And what we list on here is basically 3 resolutions that were passed. Of course, the resolutions themselves are just an expression of a significant amount of work that went into a number of major issues. So let me talk about them briefly. Resolution 23, the last one listed, is part of the normal course of business of the Finance Committee, and that is to participate in the development of the next year budget and discuss that with the team, both the internal FirstNet team and the financial teams within Commerce and NTIA as well, to make sure we have a good understanding of what the plans are for the coming year, that they're well documented and justified and so forth. And so that's just part of normal course of business. And Resolution 23 expressed the plan for FY 2020. The more consequential, I think, for the long term were probably Resolutions 21 and 22, both of which had to do with the development of an investment decision-making framework. One of the central distinguishing characteristics of the FirstNet Authority and the way it's going to operate in the future is that we're going to have significant income into the enterprise, which then needs to be redeployed for the benefit of the first responder community. The process of taking those funds and allocating them to investment priorities that are brought to us by the first responder community through the PSAC and others requires a good deal of discipline, a lot of documentation, because on the one hand, we have a lot of industry experts and technology experts that are capable of coming up with, I think, the right ideas about what's worth investing into, but then connecting those funds into the acquisition process of the federal government is actually quite a complex process. And the 2 resolutions, 21 and 22, both have to do with how we're going to do that. The first of those is entitled Investment Principles, which is high-level guidance to be applied to all our investment decision-making. And the second is a more definitive document which talks about financial responsibilities for reinvestment. I'd like to acknowledge the active participation of our federal board members in particular, because they are experts in the execution of federal dollars, expertise that most of us on the board don't necessarily possess. And they helped us create a framework for decision-making so that we could take our decisions and we could execute them through the federal acquisition machinery. So the federal board members, thank you very much for crafting the principles and helping us understand how we can actually execute our dollars. These resolutions provide for a compliant, transparent, and responsible process for allocating investment dollars into the National Public Safety Broadband Network throughout the remaining life of the program. And so I think they are very important, although they're one-time events. In terms of developing the budget for execution, I'd like to call out specifically Kim and her team for developing all the documentation having to do with the budget. In addition, Maggie Mitchell from NTIA, and he's not here today, but was here yesterday, Deputy Secretary, or Assistant Secretary Tom Gilman, who's also the CFO of the Commerce Department. They've helped us not only with the way to develop and document our budgets, but also to understand what we need to do in order to responsibly invest for the future. So I want to thank all the federal staff members and the others that participated in these processes. With that, if there are no questions, I'd like to turn it back over to Ed Parkinson, who I think will then move to the priorities for the enterprise for the coming year.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate that. So as I mentioned, we went through the 2019 goals and what we achieved. Now we've shifted towards 2020, where again, we have 5 core objectives that we look to try and achieve. Contract oversight mirrors the actions that we took place in 2019 by ensuring that AT&T delivers upon what they promised public safety in the contract that was signed a few years ago. Continuing our engagement with the stakeholder community is vital to anything we do and everything we do at FirstNet. The commitment that we have to engage with public safety on all aspects of what we're trying to achieve at FirstNet is fundamental to the success of the organization. I've spoken a number of times about the roadmap today, but that too is going to be the driving factor in how we decide, how we direct, and ultimately what we end up accomplishing in 2020 by using the roadmap implementation as a key factor in the strategic direction of the organization, which again leads to investment. We can't do one out of order with the other. We engage with public safety. We look at the impact it's had in our roadmap. We look at the strategic direction that our roadmap provides us, and then we bring investment opportunities to the board. It is that necessary approach to ensure that we bring ideas that come from public safety so that we can make the best improvements we possibly can to the network going forward. And organizational health. We have to ensure that the culture of FirstNet is one of service, one of dedication to the public safety community, and one, frankly, of expertise and hard-driven approach. We're so fortunate to have a team at FirstNet of the best people from across the country. We operate in all 5 time zones. We operate and have had events in every single state and territory across the 56 state and territories in the District of Columbia in 2019, and we certainly look to double down on those efforts in 2020. So this just gives us a quick snapshot in time of what we hope to achieve and focus in on in 2020. So with that, I'll pass it over back to Ed Horowitz to go through the Governance Committee updates.
Thank you. I also want to emphasize that last category, organizational health. I think that is extremely important, that we make sure that we have an attractive environment for our staff, and that they are treated with respect and dignity and the most professional manner, and also that we're able to attract the most professional staff possible in order to achieve these objectives and align with the public safety community. So this next part of the meeting is going to be to review specifically by committee the specific board committee charter and its amendments. So the first aspect is going to be an overview and request by each committee to approve the resolution, which will then go up to the board, which will then be embraced by an overarching charter adjustment. So for the members of the Governance and Personnel Committee, we took a look at members of Governance and Personnel Committee proposed updates to the committee's charters that reflects the goals the committee has identified for 2020. The administrative updates include designating the board chair as a chairperson for the Governance and Personnel Committee. The committee members also proposed several changes to the major duties and responsibilities section of the committee charter as summarized here in this slide. Notably, the transfer of the review and the review of the FirstNet Risk Assessment and Compliance Program from the board's Finance Committee to the Governance and Personnel Committee. The Finance Committee has done a very thorough job in risk assessment and will continue to participate in the overall enterprise risk assessment, but we are now looking for overarching enterprise risk assessment and compliance, and we believe the Governance Committee is the place to do that. And then we took a look at the recommended actions related to the board's roles and responsibilities, and as well as to the progress we're making towards hiring a CEO. So I'm going to ask first the members of the Governance Committee if there are any final questions or comments on the adjustments that we're looking to make. Hearing none, I'm going to then ask that we, just the Governance Committee, vote on the Governance Personnel Committee Resolution number 10. And I'm going to ask, Madam Secretary, would you please read the operative language?
Sure. So Governance and Personnel Committee Resolution 10. Now therefore be it resolved that the Governance and Personnel Committee approve and recommend that the board adopt the revised and amended FirstNet Authority Governance and Personnel Committee Charter as presented to the board by the Governance and Personnel Committee, a copy of which is attached here to as Exhibit A.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the Governance and Personnel Committee Resolution number 10?
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, second. Neil first, Tip second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Abstentions? No. Thank you. Madam Secretary, please make sure that the resolution is available to the public following this meeting. So with that, let me turn it over to David.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I want to take just a minute to talk to you about how we're going to improve our public safety advocacy approach in 2020. As Ed mentioned, this continues to be a key area of focus for the overall organization. And we're really going to work hard to make sure we're targeted, specific, and results-oriented this year. We'll be targeting we'll be targeting audiences that are first responders to make sure we're hitting the right people who are responsible for delivering public safety services in their communities, to really understand from the user base and the user community their feedback on FirstNet. We'll be having conversations on specific priorities to make sure we're not just hitting the entry level or 100 level conversations about the roadmap and the domains, but that next layer down, the 200 level conversations, we really dig in deep on the various priorities that public safety has already told us that are important to them as we think about how to improve and enhance and invest in the network. And third is being results oriented in the kind of information we're capturing so it can be readily imported into our roadmap and readily considered into our investment decisions, so that this time we're spending engaging in public safety with the right people on the right topics are producing results that we can readily use on those important deliverables in the roadmap and in investment. We've already begun this process. We had a terrific engagement in October targeting law enforcement and fire executives in Reston, Virginia on October 8th, where we had specific conversations about mission critical and mission critical voice and situational awareness, have produced key deliverables that we're able to incorporate into our roadmap and investment considerations. And just yesterday, we had a targeted discussion with public safety here in South Florida to get their specific feedback on situational awareness tools that they use in preparing and responding to hurricanes. And again, you're able to use that information to improve our roadmap and improve our investment considerations as we think about situational awareness in 2020. So we're excited about this new approach. We're excited about how we're going to deliver it. And for the public safety community we've been working with for the last 6 years, we're excited to continue to work with you on bringing targeted and specific and results-oriented engagements in 2020.
So we have before us the name change from Public Safety Advocacy Committee to just Advocacy Committee, which we think would simplify a lot of the work staff does, as well as our stakeholders across the country. The major duties and responsibilities are fairly simple: reviewing and providing recommendations regarding FirstNet Authority's approach for engaging, educating, and collaborating with the public safety community, as well as reviewing and providing recommendations on the FirstNet Authority roadmap, as Dave has indicated. And third is promoting efforts to identify innovation opportunities to help differentiate the FirstNet network. Yeah, any comments from committee members regarding the name change? We discussed this yesterday briefly. If not, Chair, do I?
So,
Paul, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just want to make one comment. I think this is a very positive move forward and will help to deconflict some conflict that may have existed between the Public Safety Advisory Committee, the PSAC, and this one, since they both had the same acronyms. So thank you.
Okay. Any other comments from members of the committee? If not, Mr. Chair, it's just the committee members themselves that.
They vote, but first Jennifer has to read the
Okay.
language.
Jennifer?
So Public Safety Advocacy Committee Resolution 10. Now therefore be it resolved, the Public Safety Advocacy Committee approve and recommend that the board adopt the revised and amended FirstNet Authority Public Safety Advocacy Committee Charter, including a name change from the Public Safety Advocacy Committee to the Advocacy Committee, as presented to the board by the Public Safety Advocacy Committee, a copy of which is attached here to as Exhibit A.
Motion made.
Motion by Rich Carrizo.
Second.
Second by Paul Patrick. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion prevails, and I will turn it over to, I believe, Neil, right? Technology.
Thank you, Rich. Before we get into some of the, I'll talk a little bit about some of the 2020 goals. I've talked about them earlier, so I'll go over this very quickly. You'll see, I like to call it our monopoly table chart, but it shows all the outreach that we have to all the different organizations and academia that we do in the technology committee, and the collaboration that we do that forces all of these entities to drive to that bottom goal, which is our roadmap, the FirstNet Authority roadmap. So with that, I want to go into the next slide, which talks about the Technology Committee charter. We have a change in our charter. Let me go through some of the first changes. Number one is there's a name change. We change it from the Technology Committee to the Network and Technology Committee, because the network is very important to not just the technology, but how the network performs. And our major duties are to provide technical expertise with respect to the evolution of the broadband networks and technologies, review technical recommendations from management, and provide recommendations to the FirstNet board on the FirstNet Authority's roadmap and priorities with respect to technology trends and feasibility, review and provide recommendations on the FirstNet Authority's approach to informing and collaborating with industry, academia, and other entities, and review and provide strategy guidance to the ongoing progress of the nationwide public safety broadband network deployment. With that, I will open the floor to any of my networking technology committee members, if anyone has any comments or about proposed changes. Hearing none, I'd like to thank you, and we're prepared to vote on the resolution 11. And Madam Secretary, would you please read the operative language?
Okay, Technology Committee Resolution 11. Now therefore be it resolved that the Technology Committee approve and recommend that the board adopt the revised and amended FirstNet Authority Technology Committee Charter, including a name change from the Technology Committee to the Network and Technology Committee, as presented to the board by the Technology Committee, a copy of which is attached here too as Exhibit A.
Motion made. Second.
Second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Any abstentions? Hearing no abstentions, thank you. And Madam Secretary, please make the following resolution available to the public following this meeting. I'll now turn it over to Tip.
Thank you, Neil. For those of you following along, we're on slide 24, or excuse me, slide 32. So finance goals that you can see before you here are not always terribly exciting, but that's what you get when you put together a bunch of CPAs and a bunch of MBAs. But in the area of finance, not exciting is generally good rather than bad. So the goals you see here are along the lines of the things you would expect a finance committee to focus on as it interacts with FirstNet and with the financial team. But I would like to call out a couple of things that are not specifically on the chart, but I think are important, some of which I've already mentioned, and others which I will mention on a subsequent chart as well. First, one area not called out, but less boring than what we normally do in our meetings, is the importance of the Finance Committee in helping the organization evaluate and prioritize and kind of scope the kinds of investments that are appropriate to be made. The Technology Committee is going to play a very key role in helping to identify what kinds of capabilities we need to have, and then the Finance Committee is going to have to look at those, make sure that we've identified the appropriate level of resources to the best of our ability, and to help carry those forward. So that's going to be a continuing and an increasingly important part, although it's not listed specifically on one of the goals, part of what we do. The other area in which we will, I'm sure, spend a fair amount of time is having divested ourselves of the lead role in enterprise risk management. We will continue to be very deeply involved in enterprise risk management. A great deal of it has to do with strict compliance with a whole host of laws and policies and procedures that must be followed within the federal government. And so the Finance Committee is going to have to make sure that we are disciplined and consistent and transparent the way we do that. So again, although it's not listed as a goal, it's going to be a key continuing area of responsibility. Moving now to proposed amendments to the charter. As mentioned earlier, the Finance Committee will be deeply involved in participating in the development of investment proposals. That's one of the important changes and growing areas of responsibility and interest for us. I also mentioned our continued participation in enterprise risk management. Although the lead responsibility is going to the Governance Committee, we will, as reflected in the charter, continue to have important responsibility there. And then the other kind of major area of change has to do with diminishing the role, our historic role in sort of preparing to award a contract, and focuses our attention more on the future and the execution of the contract. So the language that is changing within our charter reflects those continuing responsibilities and changing responsibilities as well. Before we vote on the new language, are there any questions or comments from members of the Finance Committee or others? No. Madam Secretary, before we vote, would you read the operative language, please?
Okay, Finance Committee Resolution 24. Now therefore be it resolved that the Finance Committee approve and recommend that the Board adopt the revised and amended FirstNet Authority Finance Committee Charter as presented to the Board by the Finance Committee, a copy of which is attached here too as Exhibit A.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the Finance Committee Resolution 24?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, Paul Patrick was the motion to approve. I didn't see that. And the second was Brian Crawford. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? No opposition, no abstentions. Madam Secretary, please note that the resolution was unanimously approved and make the resolution available to the public following this meeting. Thank you. Back now to Chairman Horowitz to review Board Resolution 103.
Thanks, Deb. The Board is now prepared to vote on Resolution 103, the FirstNet Authority bylaws and committee charter revisions. The resolution revises and amends the bylaws of the First Responder Network Authority to reflect the revised and amended committee charters as presented by each of the Board committees, and approves the proposed change in names of the Technology Committee to the Network and Technology Committee, and the change in name of the Public Safety Advocacy Committee to the Advocacy Committee. Before we vote, are there any final questions from any member of the Board? Okay. With that, can I please ask Jennifer, could you please read the operative language?
Okay, Board Resolution 103. Now therefore be it resolved that the FirstNet Authority Board hereby adopts the revised and amended bylaws of the FirstNet Authority as presented by management, a copy of which is attached hereto as Exhibit A. Be it also resolved that the FirstNet Authority Board, having reviewed the recommended revisions to each of the committee charters as proposed by each Board committee, hereby adopts the revised and amended committee charters as presented by each of the Board committees of the FirstNet Authority, copies of which are attached hereto as Exhibit B. Be it also resolved that the FirstNet Authority Board hereby approves the proposed change in name of the Technology Committee to the Network and Technology Committee, and will amend the FirstNet Authority bylaws to reflect this change. Be it also resolved that the FirstNet Authority Board hereby approves the proposed change in name of the Public Safety Advocacy Committee to the Advocacy Committee, and will amend the FirstNet Authority bylaws to reflect this change.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve Board Resolution 103, please? Neil, second?
Second.
Rich Carrizo, thank you very much. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Hearing none. And abstentions? None. So, Madam Secretary, please make the following resolution available to the public following this meeting. Thank you. And Ed and Jeff, I'm going to turn the floor over to you to provide closing comments.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you again to the board. It's been a fantastic 2019. Look forward to a very successful 2020. Congratulations again to Sheriff Miller for your award. Thank you for attending with us today. I know the team and everyone at FirstNet on the staff are very honored to work on this network. And what drove it home for me in our panel discussion yesterday was a story shared by Assistant Chief Dennis Weiner from the Palm Beach School District, the 10th largest school district in the nation, They have leveraged FirstNet, adopted FirstNet, outfitted over 850 buses with the capabilities, and they were able to stop 2 school shootings leveraging the FirstNet network. That drove home to me as a parent of a 15 and 12-year-old, just the impact this network is having and the lives that are being saved. And I know I speak for all the staff that we're very humbled to work on that and have a small part in saving lives and providing the tools and resources that public safety needs to do their life-saving jobs. So with that, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much, and I'm going to turn it over to Ed Parkinson.
Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate the time and to provide a few closing remarks. I think 2019 has been an incredibly successful year when one thinks of the accomplishments that the authority has been able to achieve, not only related to kickstarting our strategic investments, the publication of the roadmap, our new strategic plan, the number of engagements that the board has been involved in, not only the ones that the Public Safety Advocacy Group under Dave's leadership have been able to provide, but the strategic guidance that we've been able to show our partner, AT&T. We are public safety's voice. We have public safety's back. We do not answer to shareholders. We only answer to public safety sentiment. And having that as the cornerstone of what we're trying to achieve in 2019 is really the bedrock upon which we will build on the successes in 2020. 1 million adoption is an incredible number, but it's a good start. And that's all it is. It's a good start. We have a 25-year contract for a reason. We're only a couple of years into that process. And so we're not looking for numbers in 6 months, in 12 months, on a quarterly basis. We're looking at the longevity of the network. We're looking at the longevity of public safety to ensure that the network can provide services and tools for men and women out there who are protecting us every day so that we have their backs when they have ours. And I think that's the cornerstone of what we're trying to achieve at the FirstNet Authority. So I'm really proud of what we've been able to achieve in 2019 and certainly looking forward to an aggressive year in 2020 to further the goals and the ambitions of what we've been able to build upon. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ed, and thank you, everybody, for today and in participating in yesterday's briefings. We have an incredible mission. We are on a marathon, as someone said earlier. The technology continues to evolve. The network continues to evolve. The public safety community itself is evolving. The average age in public safety is evolving. It's getting younger. The next generation, the MTV generation, is aging out, and we have now a millennial generation that's coming in. And then after that, it's Gen Z. And then I don't know what the next generation will be behind that, but I know that we all take for granted that we can do everything we need to do on a tablet. We got to make sure that it's rugged, that it works wherever that environment is, and it's always on, always connected to a network. And that's our objective, make sure that we are always on and always connected, and that the messages coming in are the ones we want to come out without interruption and without alteration. So with that, I think we're prepared to adjourn the meeting. Our next meeting is March 19th, currently scheduled in Los Angeles. Details to come later. May I please have a motion to adjourn the meeting? Tip. Second?
Second.
Rich, thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Somebody wants to stay longer? Okay, nay. Okay, hearing that. Thanks to all of you who participated here in person and the audience who's joined us on the phone and the webcast today. Meeting is now adjourned.